Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So, firstly, I want to introduce first that for our group, we are from group 13, and me as a NABILA Puri Cantika and my partner AULIA FITRIAYANTI. So today, we're gonna present about the total physical response, or about the TPR. So maybe without any further ado, so we can do in the slide first. So what is the total physical response? So the TPR is a method of teaching language using physical movement to react to verbal input in order to reduce student inhibition and lower their affective filter or stress. The total physical response is linked to the trace theory of memory in psychology, which held that the more often of the more intensively a memory connection is traced, the stronger the memory association will be, and the more likely it will be recalled. Retracing can be done verbally and or in association with motor activity. Combined tracing activities such as verbal rehearsal accompanied by motor activities here increase the probability of successful recall. TPR was originated by Dr. James G. Asher, who is a professor emeritus of psychology at San Jose State University. Dr. Asher observed that the dropout rate of second language students in the traditional program is often as high as 95%. He wondered why so many people have a hard time learning a second language, although almost no one has no trouble while learning their first language. So for the introduction, according to Asher, TPR is based on the premise that the human brain has a biological program for acquiring a natural language. On Earth, including the sign language of the deaf, the process is visible when we observe how infants internalize their first language. So TPR is offered as an example of a general approach called comprehension approach. Comprehension approach places the value on the student understanding of the target language, and thus it emphasizes the listening skills. And the natural approach, the natural approach like TPR is regarded as a comprehension-based approach because of its emphasis on initial silent period in the production language. This is some quotes for Asher. It is wise to write out the exact utterance you will be using, and especially the novel comments, because the action is so fast moving. There is usually not time for create spontaneously. Yeah. And it is the natural approach. The natural approach was developed by Tracy Terrell and Stephen Krashen in 1977. It came to have a wide influence in language teaching in the United States and around the world. The most striking proposal of the natural approach theory is that adult can still acquire second language and that the ability to pick up language does not disappear at puberty. So next will be explained by my partner, AULIA.
Okay, thank you for the time. I will explain the natural approach. The theory behind the natural approach implies that adults can acquire all about the phonological aspect of any foreign language. And the second, well, learning adults have to follow. The first is acquisition and learning. However, children have only one acquisition. The third, for creation, even grammar translation method is not as old and traditional as the method of acquiring a language in its natural environment, a method which has been used for hundreds of thousands of years. And therefore, Asher total physical response is a natural method. in inasmuch as Azure sees first and second language learning as parallel process. Second language teaching and learning should reflect the naturalistic process of first language learning. Next. The next is Azure sees three processes as central. The first, children develop listening competence before they develop the ability to speak. At the early stage of the first language acquisition, they can understand complex utterances that they cannot spontaneously produce or imitate. Azure speculates that during this period of listening, the learner may be making a mental blueprint of the language that will make it possible to produce spoken language later. The second, children's ability in listening comprehension is acquired because children are required to respond physically to spoken language in the form of parental commands. The third, owns a foundation in listening comprehension has been established. Speech evolves naturally and effortlessly out of it. As we noted earlier, these principles are held by proponents of a number of other method proposals and are referred to collectively as a comprehension approach. And creation theory of second language acquisition hypothesis have five. The first, the acquisition learning hypothesis. The second, the natural order hypothesis. The third, the monitor hypothesis. The fourth, the input the hypothesis, and the last, the effective filter hypothesis. From the design, the first is objective. The second is syllabus. The third is learning activities. The fourth is roles of learner and teacher, and the last is material. Okay. The first is objective. To the general objective of total physical response are to teach oral proficiency at a beginning level. Comprehension is a means to an end, and the ultimate aim is to teach basic speaking skills. A TPR course aims to produce learners who are capable of an uninhibited communication that is intelligible to a native speaker. Specific instructional objectives are not elaborate, for this will depend on the particular needs of the learner. Whatever goals are set, however, must be attainable through the use of action-based drills in the imperative form. Next is syllabus. The type of syllabus Azure use can be inferred from analysis of the exercise type employed in TPR classes. This analysis reveals use of a sentence-based syllabus, with grammatical and lexical criteria being primary in selecting teaching items. Unlike a method that operates from a grammar-based or structural view of the core element of language, total physical response require initial attention to meaning rather than to the form of items. Grammar is taught inductively. Grammatical feature and vocabulary items are selected not according to their frequency of need or use in target language situation, but according to the situation in which they can be used in the classroom, and this is with which they can be learned. The criterion for including vocabulary item or grammatical feature are a particular point in the training is of assimilation by student. If an item is not learned repeatedly, this means that the students are not ready for that item. Withdraw it and try again at a future time in the training program. Azure also suggests that the fixed number of items be introduced at a time to facilitate is of differentiation and assimilation. In an hour, it is possible for students to assimilate 12 to 36 new lexical items depending upon the size of the group and the stage of training. Exercises a need for attention to put the global meaning of language as well as to the finer details of its organization. The movement of the body seems to be powerful mediator for the understanding, organization, and strength of micro detail of linguistic input. Language can be internalized in chunk, but alternative strategies must be developed for fine-tuning to macro detail. A course designed around total physical response principle, however, will not be expected to follow a TPR syllabus exclusively. We are not advocating only one strategy of learning, even if the imperative is a major of or minor. Format of training variety is critical for maintaining continuous student interest. The imperative is a powerful facilitator of learning, but it should be used in combination with many other techniques. The optimal combination will vary from instructor to instructor and class to class. Next. Next is learning activities. The first learning activities, imperative drill, are the major classroom activity in TPR. Other class activities include role plays and slide presentation. Conversational dialogue are delayed until after almost 120 hours of instruction. The second rationale for this is that everyday conversations are highly abstract and disconnected. Therefore, to understand them require a rather advanced internalization of the target language. Next, can my partner?
Okay, so roles of learners and teachers. Learners, wait. Learners have the primary roles of listener and performer. They listen attentively and respond physically to the command given. The teacher, who has a direct and active role, has the responsibility of providing the best kind of exposure to language. Learners are required to respond both individually and collectively. Learners have little influence over the content of learning, since content is determined by the teacher, who must follow the imperative-based format for lesson. So, and the teacher plays an active and direct role in total physical response. The instructor is the director of a stage play in which the students are the actors. It is the teacher who decided what to teach, who models and present the new materials, and who selects supporting materials for classroom use. The teacher is encouraged to be well prepared and well organized so that the lesson flows smoothly and predictably. And the last is a material. These are materials for absolute beginners. Lessons may not require the use of materials since the teacher's voice, action, and gesture may be sufficient. The teacher can use basic classroom objects such as books, pens, and etc. As the course develops, the teacher will need to collect new materials. This may include pictures, realia, slide, word cards. Some characteristics of TPR. The first is focusing on meaning and comprehension. Seated in a semicircle, great deal of listening and acting, directing a performance in which the students are actors. Verbal response is not necessary. Humor is easy to introduce. Teacher always use the target language and overcoming the fear of speaking. So yeah, I think that's all for our guys to our group. Sorry if there's many mistake, and hopefully that have a many benefit. That thank you for all. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.